Hi, this is Parvin Dabas, and we've got a great new episode for you today. First of all, Akhilesh Gannavarapu chats with Victor Cree, the head of One Championship. Then me and Akhilesh preview UFC 207. And then me and Akhilesh were also both present at the Zen Warrior Fighting Championships. We have the highlights and interviews from that promotion. And then me and Akhilesh chat about that and other fighting promotions afterwards as well.
So firstly, Victor, I wanted to talk to you about the differences in markets from say the United States and Europe to the difference
Right.
in the Asian markets. So can you please dwell
Sure.
on the major differences that you have found?
Well, I think there's a lot of differences, and I mean, as you know, business for us that lives in Asia, we know there's not really anything as Asia. Like
Right.
doing business in India is completely different than doing business in Singapore, which is completely different than doing business in Malaysia and Indonesia and Thailand and China and so on and so on. Whereas in North America, you've got a fairly homogenous country. You've got America or Canada and coast to coast, it's still really just one country. Here we're dealing with different governments, different rules, different religions, different cultures, different languages. So what we have as a regional sport property across Asia is quite a different challenge.
Right. And can you also tell us how the concept of one championship started?
Well, that's a great story. I think 5 years ago, nobody was talking about MMA. No one was looking at this landscape, and I was very fortunate that I've spent the last 20 plus years of my life working in the sports industry. And right before that, before I launched One Championship, I was with ESPN Start Sports. Mixed martial arts was the world's fastest growing sport, and here was an opportunity to launch it in Asia. I was very, very fortunate to have a great chairman, co-founder in One Championship, and he's a visionary man that just believed in the sport of mixed martial arts and the opportunity for delivering world-class sport content to Asian fans.
Right. And as you said, 5 years before, you just had one big promotion, Pride, that people kept talking about, and that was only constrained to Japan. So can you also tell us about the difficulties in penetrating through the Asian markets?
Uh, it has some challenges, as I mentioned earlier. Each country is different. I've been fortunate that I've been living and working in Asia for over a decade now, so I've had built an extensive network across the region, and I understand how business in different countries work, and that's been a great help in helping us to launch our company regionally.
Right. And now, as we all know, One Championship has become the one of the biggest sporting entities with $1 billion valuation. So can you tell us about your thoughts on how the development has been, particularly in One Championship and also in MMA in Asia?
Well, I think truthfully, we're just at the beginning of it. I think there's so much opportunity for the sport to grow, particularly because one, mixed martial arts is the only sport that is truly Asian. Every other sport across Asia, we have to teach. We have to teach people the rules of cricket. We have to teach people the rules of basketball, of tennis, of F1, of football. But everybody in Asia understands martial arts right away. So that's a big part of the growth of it. Now, One Championship is delivering martial arts at a world-class level, delivering television production, athletes, talent, everything at a world-class level on par with the biggest organizations in the world. All those multi-billion dollar properties, ICC cricket, F1, EPL, NBA. One Championship is right up there delivering that kind of level and quality of television production live globally. So that's been a big part of our business and a big part of what we're doing. We've already announced 18 events for 2017, and we're going to announce several more. So that means it's a busy year for 2017 for us.
Yes, so I'll talk about 2017 a bit. I have certain questions about that as well. But I also, initially wanted to talk to you about mainland China and how big of a difficulty or big of a challenge it was, because we know, a lot of global promotions tried to enter mainland China, but it hasn't been easy for them. But One Championship has done very well. So can you tell us how that happened?
Yeah. Well, we're still at the early days there too. We've opened up a new office in Beijing and Shanghai, and rapidly expanding there. We announced events in three major cities in China for 2017. We'll add several more dates in China as well for 2017. I'm very excited about that. Uh, China, I would say, actually, every country has its own unique challenges, whether it's India or whether it's Malaysia or China. I mean, they all have different challenges. What's different in China is the scale
Right.
and the scale of the opportunity and what you're doing. But but actually, I wouldn't say that the challenges there are any more challenging than any other country that we've been to. We're lucky that we've got great support. We've got institutional backing with Heliconia, which is a subsidiary, 100% owned subsidiary of Temasek Holdings, and they have a very visionary CEO there called Derek Lau, and he has been a big part of growing our business across the region, utilizing all of their contacts, all of Heliconia's investments, all of Heliconia's network into China and across the region, and has been a big help already for us.
Right. And now to just add things up, what do you think makes One Championship, what do you think has contributed to One Championship becoming the biggest MMA organization in Asia, as compared to, you have two different global organizations which are based out of the United States. So what do you think has worked for One Championship?
I think first and foremost, it's our values as a team and the team that we've got here. We believe in the power of martial arts to make this world a better place, and our athletes and the team and everything that we do are involved on a daily basis about building local Asian heroes that we can showcase to the world. So for the first time in the history of sports, you're seeing a sport where Asians can legitimately be some of the best in the world. You can see an Asian become a champion in martial arts and in mixed martial arts. And this is a great story to tell, and it's a great opportunity for Asian athletes. So we really focus on building those local heroes and the values of martial arts. In Asia, the sport to us rings very true when you talk about the values that we hold, which is of honor, of loyalty, respect, hard work, dedication. And those are things of why we continue to enroll our children in martial arts, as an example, because we know that we want them to learn about those values. And you can see the athletes and the champions and the heroes that we have in One Championship really exemplify those values.
Right. Now, it's interesting you explained all of that, because we have seen that no other promotion, I mean, they have tried to enter China, but as taking Asia as a whole, you have about 35% of the world population in Asia. So why do you think no other promotion has been as successful, or even gambled with the Asian markets?
Well, I can't really speak as to what they have done or what they have or have not done. I can only talk about what One Championship does and what we do well. We have a phenomenal management team, the best in the industry. I literally believe you could take my senior management team, put them into any sport, and they'd revolutionize it. But they're dedicated to building the sport of mixed martial arts to a whole new level, and taking sports as a whole to a whole new level. When we talk about our television show and how we develop fans and how we develop our local heroes in Asia, we really are talking about a level of expertise and professionalism in the world of sports in Asia that hasn't really existed before. When you talk about us delivering 18 live events across the region, that makes us the single largest producer of live sports regionally across Asia, and delivering that content worldwide. Of course, are there in country by country sports that live sports and live hours and live content. Of course, there are, but as a regional property delivering the sports globally, One Championship is by far the largest.
Right. And it's interesting you brought up the fans, because I also wanted to ask you about how you have targeted your demographic. I mean, so you're catering a product which is still a niche sport in many ways. So, did you target a specific demographic? What was the thought process behind the content plan?
We've got some great fans, a fan base, that ranges from the sweet spot for marketers of 18 to 45-year-olds, predominantly 60% male, 40% female, and the female demographic is the one that's growing the fastest. We are targeting sport entertainment. When you come to One Championship, it's not just about mixed martial arts. When you come to a One Championship event, it's literally like dropping the atmosphere of Las Vegas into a city. You come and there's paparazzi and there's red carpet and motorcycles parked on the side and Harley Davidson and Ducatis and people arriving in their Lamborghinis and their Ferraris and all these beautiful people that come out and sit cage side, the celebrities of each city and each country. Why? Because it is the coolest night to be at. They want to be a part and follow the sport, but they know that if they come out to that night, they're going to be entertained. So you've got corporations and CEOs that are hosting their guests for a great night of action, a great night of entertainment. Because, you could host your clients at an opera or send them to a movie, but they're never going to remember that. You bring clients, and when our guests bring clients to the One Championship night, they always remember it. And when they leave, they start asking them, hey, when's the next time you're going to host us? When's the next time we're coming to a One Championship event?
Right. And, the other interesting aspect of One Championship has been your ability of creating stars. Like, for example, we recently even talked to Angela Lee a couple of weeks ago. And, she has now become the highest paid MMA fighter at her age. So what do you think about creating stars? How difficult is it creating stars with that cross-border appeal?
Well, I think that that's always the magical mix that you're looking for a global star that's articulate, beautiful, talented, skillful, a world champion, all of those kind of things. Angela represents all of that. We're continually looking for that. And I think when I talk about building local heroes, what's exciting to me is that in each country that we go to, there really is some phenomenal talent, but they haven't had an opportunity to showcase. They haven't had an opportunity to work with an organization that wants to build them, that wants to see them succeed and grow. For us, this is not about showcasing just anybody on our events, on our card. We want to be able to build local heroes and global heroes that are inspirational and aspirational for our fans.
Right. So now I also wanted to ask you about the global expansion plans of One Championship, because you've been to different countries. I distinctly remember one event in Dubai in 2014, which was phenomenal. So what are your thoughts on, now that you have established yourself as the biggest MMA promotion in Asia, do you have any plans of, a global expansion?
Absolutely. We're continuing to expand. We've added several new countries for 2017. And we get a lot of offers. It's crazy. We get people all the time, every week, emailing me saying, we would like to sponsor and bring One Championship to Russia, to Europe, to India, to Brazil, to Mexico, to Canada, all the time. And we're continually exploring that. But right now, we're focusing on Asia, making sure that our core fans in the region continue to expand and we make more fans here. And as it makes sense, we'll expand internationally.
Right now,
outside of Asia, outside of this region. Sorry.
Right. So when we talk about global expansion, we immediately bring two other promotions into the conversation. So do you inherently think One Championship is directly in competition with the two promotions, or do you think they are targeting their own set of audience, and One Championship is doing its own its own thing? So what is your take on the competition between the organizations?
I think this sport is still so young. There's so much room for growth. So much room. You're not talking about the sport of MMA and the delivery of live sports across the world being at saturation. This is a unique sport where mixed martial arts transcends the language barrier, transcends the cultural barrier, transcends the race barrier, and that's why it is the world's fastest growing sport. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and as long as we continue to be innovative, creative, and deliver outstanding value to our fans, I think we'll continue to grow.
Right, and recently Forbes released, as you even said, the One Championship events for 2017. So, what is the agenda for the next 12 months? Over the period of next 12 months, what is One Championship's main agenda?
We're going to continue growing and doing what we do. We're hiring aggressively. As I mentioned, we just opened up a new office in Beijing and Shanghai, so getting that team up and running is a high priority as well. We're expanding into several new countries in Asia, so new market is always a little bit more challenging as we make sure that we get it right as we enter that market. So it's a busy year. At our calendar, we're looking at, on average, 2 or 3 events a month.
Okay. The other thing that I also wanted to ask you is One Championship has pioneered the new thought process where you said, you know what, we're not gonna get behind cutting weight before fights. Now, many people
Mm-hmm.
have talked to you about it. I'm pretty sure you're tired of telling people about the new policy. I wanted to ask you about the impact of the new policy. Did the fighters come and tell you how the new weight cutting policy has impacted them in a positive way?
I'm never tired about talking about that. I think it's one of the greatest initiatives that we've done and a huge change for the safety of the sport. I mean, I don't want to get too technical because a lot of people really don't understand it, but the gist of it is that there is a brutal process in combat sports where athletes are mandated to lose 10 to 15 to 20 kilograms of weight over a week just in order to compete. That is extremely damaging, extremely hard on the human body. What we've basically said is, look, we're not going to allow that. Whatever is your weight, is your walking weight, what you walk around is what you should compete at. And we will monitor that closely to make sure that we look after your health and safety as an athlete so you can have a longer career and you can be a more entertaining athlete. So in this last year, as the athletes have gone through it, everybody unanimously has loved it. Because why? They get to compete healthier. They get to compete at a weight that they feel comfortable, and it's at a fair matchup. That's why you're seeing a lot of great finishes in our event, because the athletes have a lot more power, and they're energized. They get to eat all week. They get to enjoy the week of fight week when they come to compete, and they've really liked the changes that we've implemented. Both we were hearing great feedback from media, from officials, and from athletes.
Right, and I just wanted to ask one technical bit in that, because you said fighters fight at their walking weight. Now, is it the walking weight or the training weight? Because for most of the fighters, it's completely different. So, what is One Championship's policy on that aspect?
Well, what we want to do is we want to see athletes stay healthy throughout their entire career, throughout the entire year. What we don't want is an athlete that weighs 100 kilograms when they're not in training, and then 80 kilograms when they are in training. We look at it and we say, look, if you want to be a professional athlete and you really want to be serious about the sport, then you should be healthy all year long and training and be ready to go all year long. Of course, you still want to be able to do a fight camp where you're going to tweak and adjust your weight accordingly over 3 months, 3 to 4 months. But what we want to see is our athletes that we sign that are dedicated to the sport treat this with a commitment 12 months of the entire year.
So, how do you say this is what the weight of the athlete is? Because sometimes, after the fight is done, you have fighters who kind of tend to eat more, gaining more weight.
Sure, of course. And that's why when we give a fighter notice 3 to 4 months before they compete, based on what their current weight is, our doctor will evaluate the current weight and say, this is the maximum allowable healthy cut that we will allow you to do over the next 4 months.
All right.
And then we juggle that accordingly with each athlete.
All right, fantastic. Now, previously you also talked about your plans of coming to India, One Championship's plans of coming to India. So can you give us any updates on when that can happen? Is that a serious discussion that is going on at this point? When can we expect One
Absolutely.
Championship to come to India?
Man, I get that question 100 times a day, it feels like, on my email and on my Facebook and Twitter. When are you coming to India? When are you coming to India? So we have a huge fan base there, and several of our board members also have excellent contacts in India. It continues to be a key market for us that we want to go to. I'm probably looking at 2018 realistically of when we're in that market, or maybe the end of 2017. The thing is, my approach and how I want to approach India is the same approach that we would look at any key market. We want to enter, we're going to enter big, and we're going to enter right. It doesn't make sense for us to come in there and just do one event or two events. We want to make sure that we've got a clear horizon of what our plan will be there for the next 5 years to 10 years, and come in there and build an entire team and treat India and that market and those fans with the respect that I know, because they're huge sport lovers, and we want to bring a world-class event from the get-go.
Right, and you also stressed previously about entering new markets the right way. So can you also dwell a little on what you mean by entering the market the right way?
I mean, we could enter a market, enter India today and do a one-off event. We've got many partners and sponsors that are interested and would love to be in India, and we could do that and go in there, hold an event, and then jump out and leave. To me, that's not the right way to enter. I want to respect our fans, respect our partners and sponsors, and enter that market with a multi-year plan so that they know that we're going to be there, so that they know that One Championship is committed, that we're committed to building local heroes, that we're committed to building the sport in that market, committed to staying there for the long haul and really doing something significant for the martial arts community and making a difference.
Right, and we've also gotten used to watching One Championship fights on Indian TV channel, but unfortunately at this point, and this is something that a lot of fans ask us, where can we watch One Championship fights? Do you have a partner in India?
We're working on a couple of deals right now. Nothing that we can announce yet, but we should have some great news for India very, very soon.
Right, we also received a lot of messages from the Indian fighters themselves. I know for a fact that there are a lot of Indian fighters on One Championship's roster. You had one just fighting in December as well. So, what is the recruitment process? If you have an Indian fighter who's interested in fighting in One Championship, what is the recruitment process like?
Well, we've got one of the MMA legends, Matt Hume, working with us. Also, another MMA legend, Rich Franklin. In general, if a fighter wants to compete with us, they've got to send in their career CV to them, and our team will take a look at it and see if it makes sense.
Right, and it's interesting you brought up Rich Franklin, because I talked to him when he signed up with One Championship, and that was a very exciting period, in his career. So can you also tell us how Rich and Matt Hume have contributed in the growth of One Championship?
They're hugely valuable. I mean, they're great people, first of all. They're great men to work with. They've done a lot for the sport. The sport of mixed martial arts would not be where it is today without their outstanding contributions. They're a huge value to my senior management team in every aspect of multiple aspects of the business. It's been great to have them on board. Rich Franklin is actually moving out to Singapore, and he'll be here next month permanently.
Okay, fantastic. So is there any update where you can then probably send one or two people to India to scout the market, to analyze the market? Can you give us any information as to when the period of entering the Indian market can start?
I don't think would be sending scouts there. I mean, we have the opposite problem actually with Indian fighters. We have too many Indian fighters that are contacting us, and we've got to be able to sort through who are legitimate and who are not legitimate. It's difficult to tell. But I think that I would love to make a trip out to India again soon. I love going out to India. I know that the moment I tell anybody on our team we're making a trip out there, everyone would probably want to jump on board and find some reason to come out there with me. So I'd like to do that soon.
All right, fantastic. So I have one final question, Victor. Do you have any message for your huge fan base, huge following in India, and also the Indian fighters who have been asking us how they can get into One Championship?
I think to the Indian fighters, we would love to see more and more Indian fighters competing on the One Championship card, and I would encourage them to stay healthy, find as many opportunities to train, to get their game up. The competition is getting harder and harder in One Championship as you're seeing athletes from all around the region dedicate themselves to training, and you've really got to be at the one of the top fighters in your country to be considered for a card for One Championship. So I'd encourage them to continue training. To our fans, thank you for your great support. We're going to take things up to a whole new level in 2017. I'm looking forward to entertaining you even more and putting on even greater events and hearing for your feedback on what we're doing and all the things that we can improve. And thank you for your support.
Outstanding. Thank you once again, Victor, for talking to us. As I said, it's an absolute pleasure. We look forward to having you on the show once again very soon.
Well, thank you for making the time. I really appreciate it, man. Take care and happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too. Have a safe day. Thank you.
Hi, this is Parvin, Dabas, and Akhilesh Gannavarapu. And you just saw Akhilesh speaking to Victor Cui. That's how you pronounce his name, Cui?
Victor Cui, yes.
Cui. Which is the biggest, One Championship is the biggest MMA organization in Asia. We were very lucky to speak to him. Akhilesh came down specially to Mumbai to speak to him since I was shooting in Kufri in Himachal in the hills, running up and down the hills. So Akhilesh had a great conversation with him, which you just saw. And we are looking forward to having a lot more Indian fighters on the One Championship. Of course, psychologically also it feels closer. It's not, even though it's probably just, a matter of another half a day or extra day of traveling. But psychologically, it feels like you're closer to home, I guess, for Indian fighters. So having said that, I think there is one. How many of there is a girl called Jeet Toshi, Priyanka Jeet Toshi, in One Championship, and who else is there from the Indian?
There was one male fighter by the name of Bala Shetty. Then you also had one guy who was supposed to fight in December, but he signed with SFL. He was supposedly set to fight in One Championship, but he signed instead with SFL.
Okay.
So as far as I know, it's about.
Had he signed with One Championship and he broke the contract and went, or had he not signed yet?
He was contracted to One Championship, but he said I'd fight in SFL instead. So the promotions can be, easy going with that. If a fighter says, I have better opportunities somewhere else, please let me go.
Yeah.
Unless he is one of the top stars or the only person that they can cater to a market at a specific market.
So what was the name of this fighter?
The promotions are easy. Sorry?
What was the name of this fighter?
Pawan Man Singh, if I'm not wrong.
Who?
Pawan Man.
Pawan Man. But Pawan Man was supposed to do Brave, not One Championship.
Maybe I'm mixing things because even one fighter was supposed to fight in Brave has broken, did not sign his contract.
Because Pawan was the one who was supposed to fight in Brave.
Right, I keep mixing names up.
Okay.
I don't remember the name exactly.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
So anyway, we look forward to many more fighters fighting in One Championship. Now coming to UFC 207, a huge card. Which in India is being screened on December 31st, 8:30 a.m. First of all, the contest. We just opened the contest. You need to get all of the 5 main fights of the main card and one of the fights of the prelims, which is Johnny Hendricks, Neil Magny. You need to get the results of them correct. Now, let me just go through them so you can hear them again. It's Johnny Hendricks, Neil Magny, then Smolka versus Borg, then Kim versus Safadin, then help me out here. Then Dominic Cruz, Dilshah versus Lineker, then Dominic Cruz versus Garbrandt, and then of course Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes. These are the 6 fights you need to call out correctly to get your USI Universal goodies, and we're going to throw in some MMA India Show goodies as well this time. The last time we didn't, but this time we will. And a lot of you have been winning MMA India Show goodies. Anyway, the lucky few of you. So this time we're going to throw in some MMA India Show goodies. An exciting contest. Amazing products from USI Universal. I've tried some of them myself. They're really high quality. Lucky ones will win them. Now, coming down to the fights, Hendricks versus Magny. Both, were on a roll and it got cut short. Magny beat, I think he beat
Hector Lombard.
Hector Lombard and Kelvin Gastelum as well.
Yeah, before he was stopped by
Lawrence Larkin. who we spoke to, of course,
Yeah.
and who is now a free agent.
Yes.
But okay, coming back to the fight, and Johnny Hendricks, of course, who's the ex-champ, and since then, of course, Robbie Lawler became the champ before losing to Tyrone Woodley. Robbie and Johnny had, I think they had, Johnny had beaten Robbie once, then he beat him to get the title after GSP retired, and then his very first title defense, he lost it to Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, that was a split decision victory.
Yeah, so and after that, unfortunately, he's had some bad, bad calls with his weight and everything. He failed to make weight against Tyrone Woodley, and then he lost to
Stephen Thompson,
Kelvin Gastelum, and then Stephen Thompson. So he's on a bit of a downward spiral, unfortunately. Ex-champ, so this gives him an opportunity, both of them, of course, to get back on track.
Yes, and you cannot count someone like Neil Magny off, because the way in which he finished Hector Lombard in Australia was phenomenal. And the other interesting thing was Hendricks recently, a couple of days ago, spoke about his next fight, and he said, you know what, this is one of those fights. If I do not win the next fight, because he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost against Stephen Thompson and against Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah.
He said, if I do not win my next fight, I'm going to retire. So that was what Hendricks said. So he essentially put himself against the wall this time around. He said, if I'm not going to win, then I'm going to retire. Yeah. While you have someone like Neil Magny, who's also a big prospect coming up, the way in which he beat Hector Lombard, but then succumbed to Lawrence Larkin was kind of detrimental for him.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting matchup nonetheless.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't give Lawrence Larkin, much of a chance against him, but he pulled off that victory. Anyway, we've spoken about that before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, both of them, are desperate to win, I would say.
Yes, and as I said, it's an interesting matchup because Neil Magny, with his range advantage, the only difference that Johnny Hendricks had with his fight with Stephen Thompson and then after Kelvin Gastelum was how he could essentially negate the range difference that Stephen Thompson has. And we saw that he was not able to do that. Stephen Thompson was very effective in keeping his distance, making sure that he did not circle around to the power left that Johnny Hendricks has, and was able to also manage to, stuff his takedowns. And Kelvin Gastelum was also, very effective in doing that. Kelvin Gastelum, with his wrestling background and then his really good combinations, crisp combinations in the pocket, was able to keep Hendricks at bay. Now the same kind of predicament is being thrown by someone like Neil Magny, who also has the range advantage. He's lanky, he's tall, he uses his oblique kicks to keep his opponents at bay. Something that Lawrence Larkin managed to counter with his own version of creating that separation and then fighting from the outside. But Hendricks cannot do that. Hendricks is short. He doesn't have that advantage. The other thing that Hendricks would essentially look at is his wrestling, which is again the advantage that he has. But if Neil Magny manages to create that separation and manages to keep Hendricks at bay and then use his reach advantage and he has really, really good kicks, that is one of his hallmarks, Neil Magny. So if he manages to, work from the outside and stuff the takedowns of Johnny Hendricks and then use his range advantage to, get in some good combinations. We have seen Hendricks being stopped before with strikes. This could be another one of those instances. But I would see Hendricks, getting the victory. Although it might not be that dominant stoppage, I do see Hendricks cruising to a victory in this fight.
Do you think the last two fights that he lost, he was more concentrating on making weight, rather than actually strategizing against his opponents? Because it seemed almost as if he made weight, he figured he was going to win. And the battle was actually making weight rather than against the opponent.
That was true, I thought, in case of Tyrone Woodley. But when it came down to Stephen Thompson, he was always going to be one of the biggest, challengers when it came down to the style of Johnny Hendricks, particularly because, as we discussed, for example, if you take someone like Robbie Lawler into consideration or Tyrone Woodley into consideration, they would not pose that distance conundrum that Stephen Thompson possessed. He has effectively did not let Johnny Hendricks come into the pockets. He just kept him at bay using his side stance. If Hendricks tried to come in, he would always use his kicks to keep the separation.
Yeah.
So that was not something that someone like Robbie Lawler possessed or someone like Tyron Woodley had. But that was what led to his downfall. And then against Kelvin Gastelum, I did not again think that weight cutting would be that big of a problem, because he has tackled that as far as what we have seen. Kelvin Gastelum himself isn't known for making weight particularly well. So might not be one of those biggest issues coming into the fight week. But this time around, I think the mentality of Johnny Hendricks is particularly puzzling. You do not see fighters saying, if I do not win the next fight, then I will retire. That's not something what fighters usually say. But he has put himself against the wall. Now, this is something that can either work in his favor or against him. In his favor, that it gives him enough motivation to do whatever he can to pick up the victory. And with the advantage that he has in wrestling department, and if he closes distance, John Hendricks is known for his power left, and Neil Magny doesn't necessarily have the game plan to circle away from that. So he can always, cut the distance, make sure that Magny circles into his power left, and things up is one of Hendricks' power, one of his advantages. So that can work in his favor. Against his favor, he can go in with a lot of added pressure. Knows that if he doesn't win, then he obviously has to retire. So it's going to be interesting to see which Johnny Hendricks shows up.
Yeah, so let's see on the day, like you said, which Johnny shows up. Now, coming to the next fight, Smolka versus Borg, they're both coming off losses. Do you think, first of all, they deserve to be on the main card? I mean, I'm not trying to, every fighter really puts in his blood and sweat, and not trying to put them down. But do you know what I'm saying in terms of it, UFC 207 being a huge card and they're both coming off of losses? Smolka, of course, admitting that he didn't think much of Brad Moreno and didn't really strategize much against him, and therefore, the very first round lost. Do you, first of all, think they deserve to be on the main card?
Yeah, I do, because both are ranked flyweights. It's not like they're not in the top 15. One was in top 10.
Yeah.
The other now is in top 15. So it's an interesting clash of styles. It's one of those sleep fights. I call them sleep fights because you do not essentially see them doing very well or being very interesting, but on the night
they can
they have the potential to be the show stealers.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you said, when it comes down to Smolka, he did not take Moreno seriously, because Moreno, he was coming from the TUF season. He did not have experience of fighting in the UFC on a big stage. He was immediately fighting someone who was ranked in the top 10. What Smolka failed to realize was how good BJJ Moreno had, how good of a BJJ game he had, how big of a name he was in Mexico. He was the top BJJ prospect in Mexico, coming into the fight. So I think Smolka failed to actually realize what kind of a challenge Moreno would be. But talking about this fight itself, it's very these two are your patented scramblers. Those scrappy fighters that you see in the flyweight division. Both of them are very exciting. One is a very fast fighter. One has his movement, which is you have someone like Smolka, who has good mix of combinations, while you have a fast fighter in Ray Borg, who essentially is one of the I won't say top flyweights, but still is making his way up. He's in the top 15. With the win against Smolka, Smolka, he was about 1 or 2 fights away when he went to the fight with Moreno. I felt if he had 1-2 more fights, he would be fighting for the title. That was what he was bringing to the table at that point. But with a loss, now he has to go back. Now he has to prove himself again, and now he has to make sure that he gets a top 10 or top 5 guy with a victory.
Now, coming to the next fight again, Kim versus Safadine. This was actually on the prelims and has been just now pushed up to the main card because of Cain Velasquez. not being allowed
Yeah.
to fight, and that whole fight, then Verdum not being given a replacement, and that whole fight coming off of the main card.
Yes. So, Kim, Kim has always been one of my favorite fighters. The way in which Kim has always had the opportunity to watch him live in TUF Macau in China, where he fought. Uh, uh, I forgot the name. So he hasn't fought in a couple of years.
Okay.
But the way he ended with a spinning back elbow, I cannot forget what big of an impact it was. Yeah, so Tariq Safadine, one of those welterweights that has been passed over so many times. Although he's one of the toughest 170ers.
And he's been around.
It's a very interesting.
Yeah,
and it's well rounded. He has a background in karate, he has background in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, background in various aspects of martial arts. So it's going to be a very interesting fight. Dong Yoon Kim, the stun gun, he lost. He has fought some of the biggest names, although he lost to them. The Damian Myers, the Carlos Condits. He has fought, the top welterweights. So and he's ranked about what 8th or 9th at this point. So he is one of the top prospects. I would say a win over Safadine would essentially propel him into a top 5 fight. Someone from the top 5. So I think Kim is one of those guys within the next year with a couple of victories will be fighting for the title. So this is again yet another interesting matchup, and can easily be can easily show the highlight knockout of the night as well.
Okay, fair enough. Now coming to, of course, the top 3 fights: Dilshaw versus Lineker. Hands of Stone Lineker. Dilshaw, of course, making a comeback after his loss to Dominic Cruz. He has defeated Ralph Asankao since then. Of course, Ralph was undefeated when he met Dilshaw, right?
Yes, they fought once previously.
Okay.
It was a very close fight. Many people felt Dillashaw won, but it was ultimately given to Asankao. So
the first time
they have the first time.
Yeah, but this
the
time,
second
of course, and Ralph was on his way to becoming the number 1 contender.
Yeah, and he did not fight, I remember, for about a year and a half before the Dillashaw fight. He was coming off a string of injuries. So, Dillashaw, again, he picked up the decision victory. Now, it's what we essentially have between Dillashaw and Lineker is the number 1 contenders fight. The guy who wins it will face the winner of Cody Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz eventually. So the matchup is inherently interesting because TJ Dillashaw is one of the most crisp boxers at 135. He has improved tremendously under Duan Ludwig. His striking, his combination, the way in which he gets into those pockets and gets out. He was one of the only fighters, one of the 1 or 2 fighters that really gave Dominic Cruz a problem. In his entire UFC career.
Yeah.
So Dillashaw has that very crisp combinations, very crisp boxing where he manages to get inside those pockets and then evade and then get out. Also, another thing that people overlook about Dillashaw's game is the fact that he was a former NCAA Division 1 wrestler. His wrestling is very, very underrated. So you have someone who can essentially outbox you. He might not be a volume puncher much like Lineker, but he has very crisp boxing, very crisp hands. He can tag you and then evade, and then if you put him in a predicament, he can always take you down and work on you on the ground.
Yeah.
Lineker, talking about Lineker himself, one of the hardest hitters at 135. We have seen what happened against John Dodson. Very close fight.
Yeah.
But Lineker, the thing with him is if you have someone with good movement, which Dillashaw has, that was a problem with Lineker. You have seen what happened with John Dodson. He used his quick feet, quick movement to create a lot of problems for him. So Dillashaw can always do that. But if Dillashaw gets tagged by Lineker's one of those heavy hands, then it could be lights out for him. So essentially it boils down to how Dillashaw moves and how he uses his takedowns to stop Lineker's advancements. He's a very aggressive fighter. He's one of those fighters who is offensive. He's a volume puncher. gets in those combinations, doesn't really care about going for the counters. So if Dillashaw uses his combinations wisely, makes sure of his timing for takedowns, and creates that separation and does not get into the line with John Dodson and get into a trading fight, then I see it to be a relatively easy win for Dillashaw. May not be an easy win, but I think Dillashaw can
Yeah, I think
get the victory.
I would favor Dilshaw as well, especially his both his wins over Renan Barao were really impressive. He showed
And
amazing
Barao at that
footwork
point,
and
it
handwork.
was
And at that time Renan Barao was at the top of his game, so it's not like he fought a depleted Renan Barao, both in confidence
yeah,
and
it was at
technique terms.
he was undefeated for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So that it was the 135 kingpin, undisputed champion at that point.
Yeah, whereas I wasn't so impressed with Lineker's win over John Dodson, because, like you mentioned, I think John Dodson's footwork, was getting the better of him most of the time. He was really quick. Having said that, Dilshaw, let's go with Dilshaw for the win here. Now coming to Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt. I always pronounce that last name wrong. A lot of bad blood here, of course. Dominic Cruz just said the famous lines, which I found, it was funny what to say. That, I've bought a house over all the wins over your teammates. So
Right.
that was pretty funny and witty. He's such a witty guy, of course. He always has you cannot beat him in terms of, he's got like a smoother mouth, unless he says it much more smoother. He's like as good as Conor, except less aggressive while saying things.
Dominic is cerebral. I
Yeah.
would put him as a cerebral guy.
Yeah.
Either in his fights or the way he trash talks, he always thinks 2 steps ahead of you. Whatever
And
his
right now I was
opponents.
just talking about, his wit, not his fight. Right now I was just
Yes.
talking about his wit. It's really smooth, and it's like a left-handed smack. You don't even know it's coming, and because with McGregor, you always know, that he's thinking all the time. Dominic Cruz, you don't see him thinking about these things, but he just spews them, which is what's amazing.
Right. So when I said 2 steps ahead of his opponents, in the mentality of it, because
Yeah.
as I said, Conor is more impulsive. Dominic is not impulsive. He thinks two things ahead of you, what you
Yeah.
would say, and he also has a retort ready for that.
Ready, yeah.
So it's very, very cerebral. He has already got inside. I feel he has already gotten inside Garbrandt's head, because Garbrandt has never fought anyone like Dominic Cruz, either verbally or physically.
Yeah.
The only reason, and Garbrandt has proven a lot of people wrong with his fights, but when it just comes down to the trash talk, the face off, Dominic has never ever faced anyone quite like Dominic Cruz. Very cerebral, very scientific. Knows his game very well. Knows what he has to say. Knows what his opponent's weakness is. What if you have seen what Dominic has done with Uriah Faber, for example, leading up to their fight at UFC 199. He got inside Uriah Faber's head. He made him aggressive. He got on his nerve. He winds you up, then he sits back, and then he enjoys. Even the conversation between Dominic Cruz and Garbrandt.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
It was, and he
Dominic
totally
obviously
wound
knows.
Cody up. He's got him all wound up, and he's just sitting there cool as a cucumber. He's very
Yeah,
chill. He
that's-
doesn't seem, like at all. Whereas Cody's like that. I'm gonna get you.
Yeah, that's what I said. He winds his opponents up, then he sits back, and then he
Yeah.
enjoys.
Yeah.
Dominic is very, very cerebral. Just talking about the fight itself now, as I said, Cody Garbrandt has never fought anyone quite like Dominic Cruz. Very, very elusive. I would essentially compare his elusiveness to what Lyoto Machida had a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
No one was able to tag him. No one was able to catch him. His footwork, unparalleled, amazing. The way he creates his angles. So there are, scientific studies which were done where people studied how Dominic Cruz actually, scouts his opponents during a fight. First what he does is he sits back, he sees his opponent's reaction to what he's doing. Then, based on what their reactions are at that pinpoint, at that at that specific point itself. He lures them in, then he connects with his combination. So during the fight itself, he learns, he understands what the situation, he baits the opponents in, and then he catches them. Scientific, that's the
He's
only way
definitely,
I
I
can
feel, one of the best fighters of this generation. The way he
easily.
combines, his technique with his mind. It's amazing. You can always see him thinking during the game, also always, and he's always ahead of you. And I think that's the thing to beat, is he's already beaten you up here. So
Right.
I think going in, that's always, and everybody knows it, and that
Right.
becomes, so the fighters are always on the back foot thinking, what is this guy, going to come up with?
Right. And now talking about Cody Garbrandt, many people tried to downplay his rise. You had him going up against Almeida. People said, "Oh, Almeida, one of the best strikers, is gonna knock him out." Garbrandt knocked him out instead. Then he fought Mizugaki. People said, "Oh, Mizugaki, a veteran in the business. Cody will not be able to do what he did with other fighters," and he did exactly that with Mizugaki. The thing that people overlook with Garbrandt is his amateur boxing. He was 32-1 in his amateur boxing, and people overlook that. When you have done all of that and you have certain experience when it comes to the striking department, that is something that can never be overlooked. And also, one thing that people fail to realize is Cody's wrestling. Essentially, I talked to Cody some time ago, and he said, "Look, I grew up wrestling. When he was 5 or 6 years old, that's when he started boxing. And when he was 7 or 8 years old, that's when, he started wrestling." So when you start at such a young age, growing up, it's by the point, you reach 22, 23, you're elite, So the one thing that the bantamweight division till now hasn't seen is the power that Cody brings in, at 135, which is something that no one has ever seen before. He has that one-punch knockout, legit one-punch knockout power that you associate with the light heavyweights or the heavyweights.
Yeah.
And people have not seen that. The opponents that Dominic Cruz has fought, no one had that legit one-punch knockout power, which Cody brings in. Now, the interesting thing that we have to see is, will Dominic Cruz's elusiveness be the talking point where he, evades those heavy hands? Or will Dominic Cruz's heavy hands be the talking point where he catches Cruz and drops him? So that is the thing that will eventually boil down.
Of course, Uriah Faber's alpha male camp knows how Dominic Cruz is going to work, and they should have some kind of a game plan ready for him.
Yeah, but when we even asked Uriah Faber if it is difficult in emulating someone as elusive as Dominic Cruz, he said it always is.
Yeah.
But I've fought him. It doesn't matter how many times someone has fought Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz is someone that is not predictable. What he does is he reads the fight during the fight. He does not go in with a specific game plan. He adjusts, which is something that we have never seen with any other fighter.
Yeah.
The way, as I said, the way he studies, he learns, during the fight itself. Then, he scouts first, then he baits his opponents in, then he connects with his combinations, which is unbelievable. And, his footwork is something that you cannot emulate. It's not easy. It's very difficult. You do not know what someone like Dominic Cruz is thinking with his scientific footwork. So, getting in those angles. But, again, now Cody Garbrandt with his boxing expertise, can actually create those angles with his striking.
He actually just needs to catch him once. He actually just needs to get one nice tag for it to be all over.
But now, the other interesting thing is, Cody Garbrandt has never fought a 5-round fight in the UFC. He has went to 3 rounds once, 3 rounds 3 times, I think, and he has only gone to decision once.
Yeah,
the other
that's
2
not,
times
that's not to say he can't do it.
He can. He can.
Yeah.
But we have never seen him doing that.
Yeah.
He might be able to do it, but we have never seen him
That's
doing
also
that.
not to say
Dominic
that he does
Cruz
need to go all 5 rounds.
Yeah, but in a championship fight, that is
Of course, that's
very
always
important
that's what you have to be prepared for. But
yes.
knowing
So the thing with the thing with going with a specific game plan and finishing a fight in the first couple of rounds is what let's take the example of Tyron Woodley, who expends a lot of energy in his strikes. You cannot do that. You have seen him doing that, then him gassing out in the third round. So Cody Garbrandt obviously has been a wrestler all of his life, so cardio and conditioning will not be a big problem for him.
Yeah.
But how good will that power be when you're going into the deep end, when you're going into the fourth and fifth round? Obviously, will not have the same amount of power that you have in the first round. So how do you manage to use it, effectively?
Yeah.
Especially someone as elusive as Dominic Cruz. That is a very, very interesting topic. So we'll know, on the night of the fight. We'll know how Cody Garbrandt goes in. We'll see how he manages to,
Yeah.
do
Now,
against
just
someone
in
like
between,
Dominic
so
Cruz.
who are you going to go with?
I am gonna go with Dominic Cruz. I will not, go against Dominic just because of how quick he is in understanding the fight and how quick he is in adapting to it.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm going to go with Cody. I just feel he's going to get lucky on the day. I'm not saying he's a better fighter or anything. I think they're both really good. Dominic, of course, is in a class by himself. I don't know why. I just have this gut feeling that he might just get lucky and tag him. That's why I'm going
Yeah,
with.
if Cody manages to win, then the bantamweight division is wide open. Then that 135 division is one of the most interesting
Exciting,
divisions
yeah,
in the
divisions.
UFC. You have Dominic, you have TJ, you have Asunza, you have Lineker.
Yes, it becomes very exciting.
So that's
and then
and Almeida
unfortunately,
is
Renan
popping up,
Barao has moved on,
Brian Caraway.
right?
Yes, Barao is playing at 145, but you still have Caraway, you still have someone like Jimmy Rivera.
Yeah.
Who's gonna fight Caraway?
Yeah.
So the 135 division is essentially wide open.
Yeah. Now I just want to talk about also how unfortunate it is that Cain Velasquez is not fighting. Fabricio Wortham. Of course, the NSAC, the Nevada State Athletic Commission, had to take the step in the best interest of the fighter. And I think it was a little, I don't know if I should use the word stupid, but naive of Cain to go on talking about how much his back is paining him and he can't stand up and I'm going to have an operation. I'm using fucking this CBD oil. Of course, the NSAC is going to notice that. And they're going to take it. Then they actually took a call based on that. You're talking about how much pain you're in and you need this oil and you're about to have an operation. And, then they're like, well, okay, I guess you are not ready to fight then.
That has been a problem with Cain. Many people look at AKA and they say they are very, old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Because, see, now this is where people say you cannot go hard sparring before a fight. You cannot hard spar before a fight. Because, the more you do that, the more injury prone you become. And Cain Velasquez has always had a history with his back problems.
Yeah.
And, essentially the fight between Verdum and Cain was the number one contenders fight. The winner would, eventually fight Stipe.
Yeah.
But what Cain had done here, that is why fighters usually do not talk about injuries going into a fight. But what he has essentially given up is he said, look, I'm on medical marijuana. I'm taking this and that medication because I have a surgery scheduled in the first week of January. That was not smart. That was not smart.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't smart anyway. Let's say for any other reason, but that you're going into the ring with an opponent and showing him a weakness of yours. The fact that you're hurting. It just would make Fabricio feel psychologically stronger.
Right, and the big, advantage at that point for Verdum would be his quickness. Cain Velasquez was never known for being the most agile fighter in the division, but when you have a back problem as severe as Cain, reportedly has, that's you cannot do that to your opponent because something like that happened between DC and Anthony Johnson. So there was an interview where the reporter asked, so DC apparently has this big knee problem. Are you going to try to exploit that? And Anthony said, I did not know about it.
Yeah.
And DC said, why did you say that? I told you that in private.
Yeah.
So it's never smart to talk about your injuries.
Yeah.
But, once Cain was removed from the fight card, Verdum said, give me Dos Santos. Now I want to fight Junior. Now that fight didn't materialize for some reason. But I think that is the next fight for Verdum. to get a
even
title
Steven
shot.
Struve asked for the fight.
Right.
I think he should have been given some opponent. Of course, it was just a week away, but the guys trained for it very hard, and there are
Yeah,
other
I think
people
they'll put
waiting
him
to.
eventually on the 208 card or a 219 card.
Yeah.
So I think the fight is going to happen within the next 1 month or two. But as we know, then now he has to go for another training camp, and it
Exactly.
depends upon how much money UFC has paid Verdum. But Verdum is a big name. I don't think he will have the same problems that Cole Miller had, for example.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, which is, I guess that's a whole different show of how, fighters are treated differently, and it's a little unfortunate because it's the ones who have less money who actually need more help, especially when they miss
Right.
a fight not due to their own, fault, and then they have to prepare again and pay again for the camp and blah blah blah, all of that. Anyway, that's a whole different show, I guess, about
Yes.
how promotions function the world over. Now, coming to the main fight, of course, Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes. A lot, of course, has been said about Ronda Rousey coming back, how she is mentally after her loss to Holly Holm when she disappeared for a year, and also about the fact that she's not doing any MMA media press for leading up to this, and what Conor McGregor would have to say to that, So
Right.
Amanda comes into this, I think, psychologically very, very strong. Of course, Ronda is looking, to make her big comeback, but it's almost as if fighters have found that chink in her armor.
I think going into UFC 193 where she faced Holly Holm, I do not see So Ronda was in a predicament where she kept winning, and that actually had an adverse effect on her mentally. Instead of being more mature, I think she kind of became more immature. She thought, present anyone and everyone, and I'm just gonna knock them out. And at that point, the truth was Ronda's boxing was not good.
Yeah.
She looked, like a world class striker against someone like Betch Correa, but what is Betch Correa as a striker?
Yeah.
She's not good, being very honest. So, I think 193 presented the real challenge as far as striking goes. And you've seen what Ronda does. I mean, Ronda is usually known for her judo, known to take her opponents down and finishing them on the ground. But when you have a legit world-class striker, someone like Holly Holm, what did Ronda do? She tried to, go for the strikes. She tried to connect with combinations. With the range advantage that Holly had, with a kickboxing background, with a striking background, it was fairly simple for Holly to knock Ronda out, and that's what she did. Another thing is, how more mature is Ronda now? How mature has she become? Mentally, we know that Ronda is not ready. A lot of people have said she's not ready. I think she is ready, but not to fight for the title again as soon as as this. So
Well, it's not as
she
soon.
talked
It's been
about-
a year. It's not been that less of time. Also, it's been a whole year. A year is a long time.
Yeah. Yes, but it's been only a couple of months since Ronda appeared on Ellen DeGeneres' show where she talked about having suicidal tendencies. Now, 2 months ago, she talks about having Travis Brown's babies. 1 month ago, she gave another interview with Ellen where she said, I'm not going to fight anymore for a long time. This actually is one of my last couple of fights. So realistically, how long are we going to see Ronda Rousey? Maybe 2 more fights,
Yeah.
3 more fights, but that's it. So I don't think mentally she's prepared to actually fight for a title. Put her against an easy opponent, couple of tune-up fights, make a fight someone that is not in the top 5. That is realistically how you rebook someone like Ronda Rousey. But just because she's Ronda Rousey, she was the one fighter to have held the 135-pound title for continuous period for like 3 or 4 years. Just based on that fact, I think UFC has thrown her, and obviously she's a box office draw. She's one of the 2 top marketable fighters in MMA today.
Yeah.
So that I think propelled UFC to put her in a title fight.
Yeah,
But she's fighting someone.
It made total sense if you look at it from the UFC's perspective, because if they give her a tune-up fight, which is like say a fight night or something or anything else.
No, you can you can put her in a pay-per-view. You don't have to put her on a fight night. That makes zero sense.
But if you're
But
not
put her on a
making her the main, the main event, without it being a title fight, see, and then if she loses, then you lose this opportunity of what they've created right now, which is, they can hype it much more, it being a title fight. And the pay-per-views will be much more because it's a title fight rather than a tune-up fight. So I'm just saying from their perspective.
Right. So when I say tune-up fight, it necessarily doesn't mean someone that is ranked 8th or 9th or someone like Alexis Davis or Sarah McMahon.
That's what I'm saying. What if they give her a tune-up fight and she loses there?
Yeah,
that would have been very bad for.
That's a double-edged sword.
That's what I mean. That's a double-edged sword. So here, at least, now again, I'm trying to see it from the UFC's perspective. Here, at least, if she does lose, she loses still. Okay, it was another title fight. She lost to the champ. She goes out. She retires. They make their money off the last fight. Blah blah blah.
See, I think I only see two fights for Ronda at this point. One is obviously against Nunes.
Yeah.
Then the last fight, I think, effectively will be against Holly Holm. Now, the thing that UFC is banking on is Rousey beating Nunes for the title, then fighting Holly Holm, who will be at that point the 145-pound champion. Then make it a super fight.
Yeah.
Right, so that is what UFC is thinking at this point. But I think they're counting Nunes out very soon because Nunes is someone that Ronda hasn't fought. As a fighter, she hasn't fought someone like Nunes till now because Nunes comes out aggressively. Okay, maybe Nunes is not a counter puncher like
but
Holly,
she has the reach.
So that gives,
I think, to keep Ronda, away, and her boxing is good enough to maintain that distance. Because Ronda is always trying to close the distance, use her, judo and grappling, whereas Amanda,
Nunes, she has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. She has brown belt in judo. She's no muck on the ground either. She has very, very good ground and pound. We have seen what happened with Misha Tate, where she was, mixing with Misha either on the feet or on the ground. It did not make much difference.
Yeah.
So, I think people are counting Nunes off just because, it's Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
If it was someone else, they wouldn't have done that before. So, I think it's essentially going to be.
I personally think Amanda Nunes is the favorite going into this fight, even though of course the betting people have still made Ronda the favorite. I personally think Amanda is, the favorite going into this fight.
I see it as if Ronda manages to, if it depends on which Ronda shows up.
Yeah.
So if it's the Ronda Rousey that fought for 3-4 years with ease, then it's going to be a different fight. If it's the Ronda Rousey that showed up with Holly Holm, it's going to be a different fight.
Well, who do you go? Who are you going to go with finally?
I am going with Nunes. I think Nunes is at the top of her game.
Yeah.
I do not see Nunes losing easily to Ronda. She's going to put up a fight. I think if it's going to be the Ronda Rousey with a different mentality that shows up, it's not going to be the don't be a DNB Ronda that's going to show up. So I think it's Nunes' fight to win.
Same here. I think it's going to be Nunes. I think she's mentally in a very strong place, technically in a very strong place. So I think she's going to take the fight. Having said that, that was the wrap-up of our UFC 207 preview, unless you have something else to say.
No, we have covered the entire card.
So, that was there's a lot of other really good fights on the prelim cards also, including the very first fight, which is Thatch trying to make a comeback.
Thatch, yes.
Price and also Tim Means. Who is he fighting?
You mean the Fight Pass prelims?
Yeah.
Or the Fight Pass prelims?
Yeah.
The Fight Pass prelims, it's Alex Oliveira.
Yeah, Alex Oliveira. Yes.
Welterweight, Alex and Tim Means.
Yeah.
Then you have Thatch and Price.
Yeah, so a lot of really good fights on the prelim cards as well. So if you have UFC Fight Pass, we would suggest you tune in, wake up early and tune in for those as well. We are going to take a short break and we are going to be right back talking about the Zen Warrior Fighting Championship, which we both went for, and our views on the local fighting promotions. So hold on, we're going to be right back, and you will first see the highlights of the Zen Warrior Fighting Championship, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
मेरे पापा का ड्रीम था कि मैं फाइटर बनूं, एक अच्छा
फाइटर
बनूं। यस, इसलिए मैंने पापा का ड्रीम कंप्लीट कर रहा हूँ।
ओके, और आपने कब स्टार्ट किया था फाइटिंग?
मैं आफ्टर 4 साल पहले से स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ।
ओके,
हाँ।
मैंने एक्चुअली ये स्टार्ट किया था सेल्फ डिफेंस के लेके, मैं खुद की सुरक्षा के लिए मैंने स्टार्ट किया था, और फिर मैं धीरे धीरे इसमें इन्वॉल्व होते गया, छोटे मोटे मैचेस, ताइक्वांडो, किक बॉक्सिंग, बॉक्सिंग। फिर मैंने 2010 में मैंने MMA खेला, और फिर उसके बाद जो है MMA मैंने SFL सुपर फाइट ली, जो 3 विन 1 लॉस गया, और अच्छा मेरा रिकॉर्ड रहा। फिर भी उसमें हमें मैन इवेंट नहीं मिला, तो फिर हम और फाइट में ट्राई करने लगा, जैसे योद्धा हो गया, FCC हो गया। मैंने FCC का भी इवेंट खेला MMA का। फिर अचानक से ये जैन वॉरियर आया, SFL की टीम से ही सर इसमें से स्टार्ट किए जैन वॉरियर। तो फिर मैंने जैन वॉरियर में आया, और फर्स्ट इवेंट था मेरा सोहेल के साथ, तो उसमें मैंने मेडल मारा था। और फिर नेक्स्ट इवेंट था मेरा आदित्य के साथ था, तो जिसमें मैंने हार गया था फाइनल को 1 पॉइंट के लेके, लेकिन कोई बात नहीं है, मेरा 3rd फाइट है, इसमें मुझे जीतना है और अच्छी तरह से जीतना है।
मैंने फाइटिंग इसलिए स्टार्ट की कि मुझे ऐसा मतलब ये था कि मैं आगे चल के कुछ करूँगा नहीं करूँगा, लेकिन मुझे अपना फ्यूचर सिक्योर करना था, इंडिया लेवल पे रिप्रेजेंट करना था, या फिर इंडिया लेवल पे अगर मैं रिप्रेजेंट नहीं कर पाता हूँ तो अपने लिए खुद के लिए कुछ नाम कमाना था, इसलिए मैंने फाइटिंग शुरू की।
ये मेरा 4th फाइट था ZWFC में। आई हैव डन 2 knockouts and 1 decision win, and this was my decision win. It was a tough fight, but not that tough. I will come back stronger and win the knockout.
नहीं, बस वो मेंटली ब्रेक करना चाहता था मैं उसको। पंचेस लग रहे थे मेरे को, किक भी लग रहे थे बहुत सारे, पर उसको दिखाना नहीं था। अगर वो दिखा जाता तो वो मेरे को और मारता, पर ये स्ट्रेटेजी थी मेरी, बहुत ट्रेन किया मैंने इसके लिए भी।
Today, the MMA India Show is in conversation with Rodi's X4 competitor Yogesh, the Dragon MMA gym owner Shantanu, and pro MMA fighter Sahil, and their teammate Yogesh. So Yogesh, आपने फाइटिंग कब और क्यों स्टार्ट की?
मैंने बचपन से ही रेसलिंग बैकग्राउंड से हूँ, तो बचपन से ही एक जज्बा था कि इंडिया के लिए कुछ करना है।
अच्छा, तो आपने उस
ये फाइटिंग स्टार्ट कर दिया।
ओके, और आपका एम क्या है एज अ फाइटर? आपका सबसे बड़ा एम क्या है?
मेरा सबसे बड़ा एम है कि मैं UFC चैंपियन बनूं, हेवीवेट, और
आपका
UFC 300 तक इंडिया को UFC में रिप्रेजेंट करूं।
अच्छा, तो आपने उस
ये फाइटिंग स्टार्ट कर दिया।
और आप ड्रैगन MMA जिम आपने कब और क्यों स्टार्ट किया था?
ड्रैगन MMA जिम का कंसेप्ट हमने 2014 में कोल्हापुर में शुरू किया।
ओके,
और राइट नाउ वी आर ऑपरेटिंग पुणे।
ओके,
सो वी आर गिविंग पर्सनल ट्रेनिंग टू क्लाइंट्स। वी आर रनिंग आवर सेंटर जहाँ बंदे आके फाइटिंग का ट्रेनिंग लेते हैं।
The actor, director, the talk show host, Mr. Parvin Dabas. And joining him on stage would be Mr. Ronak Gupta. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner, Anthony Nadal. जोरदार तालियां हो जाए एक बार मयूर सर के लिए।
बहुत बड़ा मैनेजमेंट होता है उसमें, फाइटर वहां से आने से लेके यहाँ तक पूरा मैनेज करना पड़ता है। यहाँ पे हमारे जो वॉलंटियर्स थे, जो जैन फिटनेस स्टूडियो के स्टूडेंट्स हैं, उन्होंने बहुत अच्छे से मैनेज किया। जो क्रिक फोर्स सर्विसेज है, जो मेरा फ्रेंड शंकर डावर है, स्कूल फ्रेंड, उसने मुझको सपोर्ट किया यहाँ पे सर्विस, सिक्योरिटी सर्विस प्रोवाइड करके, इसलिए मैं उनके टीम के लिए थैंक यू बोलूंगा। यहाँ पे जितने भी मान्यवर आके गए, यतीन सालवी, अशोक सातरडेकर, आबाद जिनको हम लोग कहते हैं, वो, फिर राजा भाऊ चौगुले यहाँ पे आके गए, हमारे एमएलए आके गए, प्रवीण दबास जो है वो यहाँ पे आके गए। तो यही हमारा रिटर्न है कि हम लोग ने जो भी किया वो सक्सेसफुल हो गया। नेक्स्ट टाइम हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे फिर से हम लोग और भी एक्सेलेंट फाइट लेके आए।
And we're back with me, Parvin Dabas, and Akhilesh Gannavarapu. So Akhilesh, we were both at the Zen Warrior Fighting Championship. Of course, we have to always encourage, fight promoters who are. It's not easy, of course, putting these fights together, bringing the crowd, educating people. In India, I think you still have to tell people, जो सुल्तान मूवी में सलमान एंड में जो खेल रहा था ना, वो है MMA. So because of course in the first edition of SFL they were in that position of taking it to the masses. Unfortunately at that time it didn't happen. They are coming back now. We will be talking to Bill Dosanjh, and we wish them all the best. We'll be having a detailed conversation with him soon. Now, it is always, of course, like we were talking about, we need to encourage fight promoters, locals, so the bigger ones come up, so it reaches the grassroots. People see the fights, they're educated. But at the same time, there are other things that we need to speak about as well. Now, there were some, talented fighters on the fight card. There were some good fights. There were some upcoming, that's the word I would like to use. There were some upcoming fighters as well. The audience was enthralled. One could feel the excitement. What's your viewpoint, in encouraging local fight promoters?
Yes. So the first thing that I noticed and I was impressed with was the fact that they were using shin guards. It's very important, especially in a kickboxing fight where you use a lot of kicks, and that could potentially, lead to certain injuries. Your, fibia, tibia, various issues, your ACL, MCL, whatever it is. Yeah. So, them using shin guards, them using protection was an encouraging sight. Yeah. Now, I would have been happier if they also used a headgear because, let's face it, these are, people that are from rural areas, might not be as well educated as the urban.
Not all of them. Some of them were, urban, kids, if I would use that word, kids and, guys. Some of them, yes. Some of them were, of course, from rural areas, but some of them were educated kids.
Yeah, so but the point is, when you get into a fight, you get into a mentality where you say, I'm gonna just knock him out, I'm just gonna thrash him, I'm just gonna use everything in my power to ensure that he goes to the ground and he doesn't get up. Because that's your mentality going into a fight. No one goes into mentality.
That's the mentality you have to go into a fight with, I guess.
Right. So no one goes in defensively. No one goes in saying, I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to hurt myself. I don't want to injure anybody. I just want to get the victory.
You're trying to finish off the other guy before he finishes you off.
Yes. So, you always go in with the mentality that you have to finish him. Now, the thing that people don't realize, and this is a very, very, very important topic that people don't discuss, is the implications of a fight. The reason why UFC or any fight promotion in the world makes just one fight for a fighter in 2 months is you need to fight and then your body needs to recuperate. It's not like you cannot get into a fight and then get into another fight in 5 days or 10 days or 15 days because your body needs to get better. It needs to recuperate.
But in this particular championship, we don't know how long ago they fought or in how many days they're going to fight. This was a one-day championship. And they were all just fighting once.
Right. So I was just generalizing
Okay.
I just want to talk about the fighter mentality.
Yeah.
For this in particular, again, coming back to the importance of fighter safety, I personally know someone who fought on the card, went second last. One of the up and coming fighters in India, just brutally took a lot of shots to his head. And it's, as I said, it's something that the fighters do not think about going into the fight. They cannot think about getting injured. They cannot think about getting knocked out. They need to just go in. They want to go in and finish their opponent. But in this particular fight, the fighter got hit multiple times in the face, on the head, on his temple, and he was disoriented. I started saying he should not continue because he could not walk straight. He was on those wobbly legs. Once you have a fighter on wobbly legs and you're separating the fighters, as a referee you cannot get the fight going on again, because I've seen the guy did not even getting his hands up while getting hit. He was just standing there taking those blows. And although
but tell me one thing, is that the promotion's call or that's the referee's call, right?
It's a referee's call, yes, but as a promoter, if you're a promoter, you need to step in at that point. You need to step in. What happens if, say, someone in the UFC as
But
a
you
referee
can't
is
really
mixing
step
things up?
in, can you? As a promoter, it has to be the referee who takes that call, or the doctor.
Or the doctor, yes, but if you're a promoter, if I'm a promoter promoting fights, if I see my fighter getting injured bad, I can always step in. Dana White
Can
obviously
they
has
step
the
in?
call.
Can they step in to say that the doctor has to check the fighter and see if he's,
Or he can tell the referee to stop the fight. He has the authority at that point.
Okay.
He
does
has the
have the
authority.
Okay.
Yeah, so he can step in, he can ask the referee to stop the fight because the fighter cannot continue.
Yeah.
Now, what happened? I mean, maybe, okay, so it depends on how you look, because the fighters' corner, that were there, they said, hey, it's only 20 more seconds. Hey, it's only 30 more seconds, suck it up, finish the fight. So it depends, how on which perspective you take, or which side of the fence you're on. But I look at the importance of the well-being of a fighter. Obviously, I do not have a stake in what happens. I do not get money, if the fight finishes or if the fight doesn't finish, right? So, and they would obviously, the fighter, the corner, they think more about finishing the fight, getting the job done. So it's again, which side of the fence you're on. Me purely looking at the safety of the fighters, the perspective of someone that just knows the implications of getting hit in the head. So what happened after the fight was, he was taken to the back where he just laid on the floor. He could not move. He could not do anything. He was breathing heavily. At that point, I knew, getting hit on the head so many times, I knew it was a concussion. I've seen it so many times. And I've personally suffered concussions. So I know for a fact what a concussion looks like and what happens afterwards. Immediately after you have a concussion, there are instances where you throw up, and that is a bad indicator, right? So he was laying in a room, then he was taken out to get some fresh air, where he just could lay on the ground. He couldn't even move. Then he started puking, and I started telling people, look, he suffered a concussion. He needs to go to the doctor. And everyone was like, no, he's okay. The fighter himself was like, no, I'm okay. That's what I'm saying. These fighters do not understand the long-term implications of a fight. They do not understand, because for them, this is their life, this is their livelihood. They need to fight to survive. I understand that. But at what cost? At what price? You're putting your...
But isn't that the name of the fight game? If you look at Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald, how much they hit each other. His nose was almost broken. And he himself had to, of course, finally cover his face for it to stop. And then the referee stepped in. But
right, so having a busted nose is different. Having a busted lip is different. Now suffering a legit concussion. So now this is where someone gets knocked down. Immediately the referee steps in, and we have seen some dubious calls where the referee said, let's stop the fight. Although the fighter was, he was knocked down, he was not knocked out, but still we supported the referee, saying that was a right call. Why? Because even though he was just knocked down, he was not knocked out. It could have been worse. If he did not get his hands up, he would have just suffered another concussion. He would have been knocked out. Then that goes, we have talked to Gary Goodrich, for example. Why go anywhere else? Yeah. We've talked to Gary, and he told us, fighting those many times, getting hit in the head so many times, that shortened my career and my life. Now he lives with dementia. He cannot remember what he has done 20 minutes ago. right? So is that the life of a fighter that you want?
No. So what's the solution according to you?
Training the referees properly is the main important thing while starting any promotion.
So it's
So
knowing
if
when
you are
to
a
stop
referee,
a fight. You mean the referees have to know when to stop the fight, because of course that's part of
yes,
the getting hit is part of the fight game. That's what you're going into the ring for. You have to expect that. But the
yes,
referee just has to know when to stop the fight and recognize when a fighter cannot go on anymore, and when he's not able to defend himself properly.
yes, because once you step inside a cage or inside a ring, you're putting your life in the hands of the referee. You know, there's a reason why a referee is trained for years before he referees a fight. So we have even seen instances in the past where referees did not call the fight off immediately. We have seen fighters themselves letting the opponents go because they're already choked out or they're already unconscious. They've said he's already unconscious. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to kill him?
Yeah.
And in because Roy the referee, so because the implications, they know what these essentially shorten you. That's not a joke, you know. So living a life with dementia, living a life with depression, with all those brain injury, starts taking their life depression. That is because get so many times.
Yeah.
So we need to understand the long-term implications. So as a promoter, if I'm doing an event, I need to make sure that the safety of the fighters come first. It's, you know, we always want those interesting fights, those explosive fights where you go back and forth, which is fine. But once you kind of, you know, sense that the fighter might not be all there in the head, you know, sometimes when you're a promoter, you can see that a fighter is not getting his hands up, just getting it in the face and is on wobbly legs. You call the fight off. You cannot let that go.
So I would agree with you that the solution is actually training the referees better, because
and getting proper medical attention
and getting proper medical attention and having proper medical personnel at the fight.
Yes, so having just one doctor doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, if two guys get knocked out, who are you going to attend to first? You know, in a fight, and this is 5-7 fights that are going on in one night. So are you just going to look at one fighter for 5 minutes and then give your attention to another one? That doesn't make sense. That's not how it's supposed to work. So what is of the utmost importance is making sure that the vicinity, you know, where the fight is happening, you have a hospital where in case of an emergency, you can make sure that you transport the fighter.
Yeah.
You know, you take him medical assistance at time, because we have seen when that doesn't happen, you fighter slipping into coma or something. So this is something which can come fight. So these precautions that every promoter needs to take, needs to ensure. And this is happening in India, which, let's be very honest, is 20 years, you know, in time where United States was or where Europe was. You know, this happening in 1990, but now happening 20 too late. It happen in India. Need to precedence.
So I think the thing one needs to do as an MMA talk show and a media organization, and one of, you know, the leading ones in India, is, you know, encourage fight promotions, but encourage the proper infrastructure and the proper you know, medical facilities at the same time, and referees, and letting, you know, the referees be knowing when to stop a fight, because, you know, like we said, it's not easy putting a fight promotion together and getting people. At this one, in fact, they had entry free and they had a pretty good turnout. They had a lot of local, you know, support and people turn up, which was great to see. So the thing is to walk the balance between encouraging them, because they are, you know, trying to promote the fight game, but not letting that become a righteous thing where we are overlooking other certain elements of the fight game, which is fighter protection. and referees knowing when to stop a fight.
In this aspect, accountability is very important. You need to be able to hold people accountable. Although you are supporting, because us as the media, as a journalist, for example, that cover the sport, we always support the fighters and the promotions and the promoters. We have nothing against them. But that doesn't mean we overlook anything and everything that is wrong with the sport per se. If something needs to be properly put in place, if something needs to be developed, we should be the first people to say, look, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to take care of. Because when we tell people that, the first thing that comes out is, okay, we do not have proper funds to do this, or why don't you support the sport first? Of course we are supporting the sport, but if you don't have proper funds to arrange for medical attention, arrange for certain things to be put in place, then don't do the event. Do it once you get sponsors on board. Why do you do it when you know for a fact you do not have enough funds, which could jeopardize the fighters? So that is a very important discussion that needs to be had. That we need to have, but people don't talk about it.
I think, in fact, we should probably do a separate show on this, because we need to get the views of everybody. And just talking right now, I feel this is a special episode in itself, where we will call different promoters and people associated with the sport, as to how they see it growing, and what is their take on the people actually doing it, on how much they're looking at fighter safety, and how well they are prepared in case something goes wrong, and what all they have to do to put a fight together as well.
Right, and we also need to take precedence from what happens in the United States. Now, what happened in 2007 was they established a separate facility just to understand the impact of combat sports, just to understand the impact of what happens to a fighter or to an athlete when getting hit in the head. This transpired because of the NFL stars taking their lives because of brain damage. Now, if we, since the sport is growing at this point, if we reach this point in 5 years, then we are still 20 years, just 20 years before what happened in the United States. We're not going in that path, which is not good. What we will see is, we will see increase in brain damages, increase in the death rate of the fighters, increase in fighters getting knocked out, put into a coma, all of these things that cannot happen and should be prevented. So what we should also do is make the fighters and the promoters understand the importance of getting proper medical attention, making sure that these things cannot happen. We can get a doctor from the United States to talk about how difficult it is for an athlete to overcome these instances. So the first thing I want the fighters to understand is, this is the starting point of their career. They are just 22, 23. At this point, it doesn't make sense for them to get knocked out in every fight, giving everything that they have. And in 5 years' time, when the sport is really in its mature, it's still getting matured. At that point, it doesn't make sense for them to be in 27 or nearly 30 and then have to retire, because if they fight again, they will have permanent brain damage.
Yeah. So I think it's a matter of sculpting the way the sport is rising, encouraging people to do the right thing as well. And while they're fixing up their fight promotions, which we all want to see, but getting them to focus on all areas, and encouraging them to do that in a positive way, where they still feel encouraged to continue with their fight promotions and add on the aspects where we feel they've been lagging. So we're not discouraging anybody in any way, but encouraging them to continue, and by adding on medical facilities, proper referee training, which will make it a healthy sport for everybody. Of course, one can never rule out totally, because it is a contact sport, but one needs to take precautions as much as possible and factor them in while planning the promotion.
Exactly. If that's what I said, if a promoter comes in and says, look, we do not have proper funds to make these adjustments, then wait for a while. If you postpone your event for a month's period and get things in order, it won't, completely ruin the sport in the country. In fact, you're setting precedents. You're doing something good for the sport. And this is what the other promotions or the other promoters will take care of. So if you do not do that, and if you say the funds are a problem, or the just support the sport for now, we are going to support the sport. But at the same time, you're just not going to sit on the sidelines and watch these fighters ruin their lives and their careers just for one night's payment.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, having said that, we wish all the fight promotions in India all the best. And we will encourage you to continue, but have all your safety measures in place. Because at the end of the day, it is the fighters who the people come to see, and their safety is of utmost importance to all of us, because they are the ones who need to continue. You cannot, we should not treat any of them as a disposable asset. And I don't think a lot of people, most people do. I think that's a rare thing, and whenever it does happen, we will talk about it. We will point it out. So we want to keep encouraging the sport of MMA in our country, and at the same time make sure it grows in the proper direction and in the proper way.
Yeah, because we'll always be here to support the sport, to give any kind of assistance or help that we can.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we also need to make the fighters understand that this is not it. You still have 10, 15 years in front of you in the fight game. So it doesn't make sense for you to just go out and throw everything in just one day, for just one night's payment.
Yeah. So having said that, we will end the show today. And it was great having you all join us again. A really good episode, and we look forward to seeing UFC 207 soon and talking about that. We do have a new website coming out as well very soon, which we are working on, www.mmaindia.com. If you want to give us some suggestions, feel free to DM us on our Facebook page. We're going to be coming out with it very soon. You are going to have an international Indian website with an international talk show as well, which you've had now for the past 4 or 5 months. So we're planning bigger and better things for you guys in 2017. Hopefully, our last show will be on December 31st, right after the fight, before we go away, all of us drinking. So see you guys very soon, right after the UFC 207. Thank you for joining me, Parvin Dabas, and Akhilesh Gannavarapu. Thank you and goodbye.